Have you ever felt like there was something inside you that no one sees, but that consumes you from within? An invisible weight that you carry even when everything seems normal on the outside. Perhaps it's the absence of someone who left too soon. Maybe it's words you heard as a child, words that hurt you and still echo today. Perhaps it was a silence, an abandonment, a touch that shouldn't have happened, a situation you pretended to forget, but that your body and mind never let go of. Maybe the pain came from your own family. Parents who didn't know how to love. Mothers who projected their frustrations onto you. Siblings who competed for attention while you just wanted to be seen. Or maybe it was life outside. An abusive relationship, a betrayal, the loss of someone who was your foundation, or even something you could never name. But that keeps sabotaging you in small ways, in the difficulty to trust, in the fear of being rejected, in the anger that explodes for no reason. It doesn't matter what it was, whether it had a name or not, whether it was recognized by others or minimized, whether it happened once or was repeated for years. The truth is that trauma settles where there was no space to feel, where there was no welcome, no understanding. It forms when something inside you cried out for help and no one answered. And the worst part? It's that maybe you learned to silence that cry, to smile while bleeding inside, to move on as if you were strong, but feeling increasingly disconnected from yourself. You became an expert in surviving, but forgot how to truly live. This video is not for those looking for quick fixes or pretty self-help phrases. It's for those who are tired of pretending to be okay. It's for those who have realized that trauma doesn't go away on its own, that it doesn't disappear with time. It hides. And the more you try to ignore it, the more it takes over your life, in your relationships, in your choices, in your addictions, in your anxiety. Carl Jung said that what we do not face in ourselves, we end up encountering as fate. And Freud showed that everything that is repressed returns in a distorted, painful, repetitive way. If you feel trapped in patterns you don't understand, if you live on autopilot, if you feel that something inside you is broken, then this video is for you. Today you will understand what trauma really is, how it forms, how it shapes your psyche, and, more importantly, what to do with it. Because the hard but liberating truth is this: you will never heal until you look at what hurts the most. Stay until the end, because I will bring practical tips on how to deal with your trauma. There is a way, and it starts now. Trauma is not defined by the severity of what happened, but by the impact it had within you. Often, what hurt you was not something spectacularly violent, but the loneliness you felt when everything collapsed. The lack of acceptance, the unspoken fear, the ignored pain. Carl Jung understood this deeply. Trauma is not just a bad memory, but a rupture in the natural flow of the psyche, a force that fragments and reorganizes the soul in a distorted way. When we go through something that exceeds our capacity to process emotionally, like a sudden loss, abuse, rejection, neglect, abandonment, or humiliation, our ego, fragile and limited, cannot handle it. Then the psyche makes a drastic decision. It pushes that content into the unconscious, not because it wants to forget, but because it cannot cope. As Jung said, the psyche protects itself from disintegration through repression, and what is repressed does not die. It only reorganizes in the darkness. This is where what Jung called a complex is born, a grouping of autonomous psychic energy laden with emotion that lives hidden but active. Complexes are like little selves within you, created from traumatic experiences that continue trying to resolve that initial pain, even if you are not aware of it. He also said, Complexes are like sub-personalities that interfere in your life without you realizing it. You feel like you are in control, but you are not. The trauma is. It appears in the form of repeating patterns, relationships that always end the same way, explosive reactions to minor criticisms, feelings of abandonment in mundane situations, difficulty in trusting, irrational fear of being rejected, constant anxiety even when everything is calm. All of this is a sign that a part of your psyche, a wounded part, is trying to get your attention. But what do? We ignore it. We pretend it has passed. We anesthetize ourselves with distractions, work, alcohol, social media. The psyche, however, continues to operate behind the curtain, and the suffering persists. Jung understood that trauma disorganizes the process of individuation, the natural path of the soul towards integration and wholeness. When this journey is interrupted by trauma, we become captives of undigested pain, and so we live as fragmented adults, reacting with the emotions of a wounded child. But if trauma separates us from ourselves, there is also a way to reconnect. And that is exactly what we are going to explore now. What needs to be done, consciously and practically, to deal with this hidden content and begin to heal. Because yes, there is a way, and it starts with courage. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. You may not even remember the trauma, but it remembers you. It lives in your way of reacting without thinking, in the difficulty of saying no, even when everything in you screams for boundaries, in the irrational fear of being abandoned, criticized, or simply not being good enough. Trauma shapes behavior, and it does so subtly, yet relentlessly. Carl Jung described this accurately. Contents that have not been integrated by consciousness resurface through autonomous complexes, fragments of the psyche that act as mini-personalities within us. They emotionally hijack us. They make you relive, unconsciously, the same kind of painful situation as if you were trapped in an invisible script that always ends in suffering. And it doesn't matter how many times you say that this time will be different. If the complex is still active, it will pull you back into the same cycle. This is why so many people live in serial abusive relationships, procrastinate important decisions, sabotage their own success, or develop anxiety disorders, compulsions, and addictions. These manifestations are often attempts by the psyche to bring to consciousness something that has been repressed. As Jung stated, the unconscious not only influences, but shapes our attitudes and decisions. But trauma does not only act on external behavior, it also shapes your internal structure, your thoughts, your deepest beliefs. It implants ideas like, I don't deserve love, I can't trust anyone, if I show who I am, they will hurt me. And then, without realizing it, you start to build your life on top of these emotional lies. Worse, you begin to act according to them. Freud, at this point, compliments Jung by describing the mechanism of repetition of the repressed. The mind tries to relive the original trauma in new situations, as if seeking a resolution that never came. This explains why, even aware of the pattern, you cannot escape it just by willpower. Trauma does not respond to logic, it responds to emotional language. And as long as this language continues to be ignored, it will keep expressing itself in the form of symptoms, crises, and blockages. Therefore, true transformation requires a step beyond understanding. It is necessary to connect with these fragmented parts, to face them head-on, and reintegrate them into consciousness. It is not about forgetting the past, but about reclaiming the power it took from you. And this leads us to the next crucial point. What really works when we talk about deep emotional healing? Because it is not enough to know that trauma exists. You need to learn how to confront it. And there are practical, accessible, and profoundly effective means to do so. And that is exactly what we are going to explore now. You can bury what you feel, rationalize, distract yourself with work, social media, or even toxic spirituality. But trauma doesn't disappear just because you pretend it's not there. Ignoring the pain is not overcoming it. It's postponement. And the more you postpone, the deeper it takes root. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." The suffering you avoid doesn't vanish. It moves to the background of your psyche and begins to silently shape your reality. An unintegrated trauma becomes a lens. Everything you see becomes distorted by it. Love seems dangerous. Success seems unattainable. Life feels like a minefield. And do you know what the biggest problem with this is? By avoiding pain, you also avoid transformation. The psyche only matures when it is confronted with emotional truth. And that truth is rarely comfortable. Freud pointed out that repression, the ego's attempt to suppress what is painful or unacceptable, is the initial mechanism that generates neurotic symptoms. But suppressing is not healing. It's anesthetizing. And everything that is anesthetized will eventually return. Stronger, more confusing, more destructive. Have you noticed how sometimes situations repeat in your life like an echo? Different people, the same conflicts. New cycles, the same pains. This is not bad luck. This is the unconscious asking for attention. Jung called this meaningful synchronicity, external events that reflect unresolved internal realities. The outside world becomes a mirror of the inner world, and the more you try to be positive, think ahead, or let it go, the more the symptoms intensify. Because the unconscious is not interested in superficial positivity, it wants integration. It wants you to stop running away, to face what has been denied, to bring light to where there was only shadow. But here's a hard truth to swallow. Healing hurts. And that's why many prefer not to stir things up, because it's easier to maintain the known chaos than to dive into the unknown of healing. But the pain you avoid today will be the pattern you repeat tomorrow. Jung was clear. There is no awakening of consciousness without pain. This doesn't mean you have to suffer forever, but rather that the pain needs to be felt, understood, and transformed. Healing begins when you decide to stop running. And this leads us to the question that really matters. If ignoring doesn't work, what does? How do you confront trauma in a practical, real, accessible way? What tools exist, beyond theory, to help you reconnect with the lost parts of yourself? In the next part, we will delve into exactly that, the real, concrete, and effective means of working with trauma. Tools that allow you to start today, even if gradually, even if afraid, because the path to healing doesn't require perfection, just presence. It's time to stop merely understanding trauma intellectually and start working with it in a direct, visceral, and practical way. If up to this point you have recognized that you carry unresolved pain, that patterns repeat, that your behaviors sometimes don't make sense, now is the moment to begin the healing process. And this requires more than just will. It requires method. Carl Jung believed that the healing of trauma begins with the reintegration of unconscious content. And this reintegration does not occur through force or denial, but through deep listening to what has been rejected. It's like rescuing parts of yourself that have been frozen in time. He wrote, "Healing is not about becoming perfect, but about becoming whole." But how to do this in practice? The first tool is radical observation of your triggers. Start recording, at the exact moment it happens, everything that throws you off balance. Situations, phrases, behaviors of others that provoke in you a disproportionate emotional response. Anger, shame, panic, paralysis. These are direct portals to traumatic complexes. What affects you deeply today probably hurt you a long time ago. The question is not, why am I like this? But rather, where does this really come from? The second tool is therapeutic journaling. Write with total honesty. No filters. Write for yourself, as if you were telling your story to someone who needs to know the truth. Start with the most difficult moment you remember. Describe the details. What you felt. What you wish you had said. What still hurts. Jung believed in the power of words as a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. And writing is a way to transform emotion into symbolic form. The third tool is active imagination, a technique developed by Jung to access unconscious content without rational censorship. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and invite the image of your trauma to emerge. Allow it to manifest as it wishes. A figure, a landscape, an animal, a sound. Dialogue with this image. Ask what it wants to show you, what it feels, what it needs. You may be surprised by what emerges. The unconscious speaks through symbols, and this symbolic dialogue can reveal truths that have been hidden for years. Another powerful practice is dream analysis. During sleep, your mental censorship decreases, and the unconscious expresses itself more freely. Keep a notebook by your bed and jot down every detail as soon as you wake up. Pay attention to patterns, recurring characters, unknown places, intense emotional situations. Often, trauma appears in dreams disguised as a monster, a pursuer, an accident. Interpreting these images carefully can open pathways that the conscious mind would never access alone. And of course, there are times when it is necessary to seek qualified professional help. The inner journey is deep, and we cannot always navigate it alone. Psychotherapy, especially with a Jungian or psychoanalytic focus, offers a safe space to confront, elaborate, and integrate what has been fragmented. The therapist does not heal for you, but walks alongside you as you learn to carry what once seemed unbearable. Finally, remember, confronting trauma does not mean reliving the pain forever. It means giving it a new place within you. A place where it no longer needs to scream for attention. A place where it can finally be heard, embraced, and dissolved. This is the beginning of true individuation, the process described by Jung as the journey of the soul towards wholeness. But this path does not end here. Because knowing what to do is only half the process. The other half is understanding how to apply all of this consistently in daily life, without getting lost along the way. And that is exactly what we will explore next. The practical tools and step-by-step guidance you can use to transform knowledge into action. Because you are not here just to understand, you are here to be set free. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It breaks down Jung's core ideas and gives you tools to understand yourself more deeply. Link is in the pinned comment. Knowing that trauma is present is just the first step. Feeling its presence, recognizing its effects, and even understanding its origin is not enough if you don't know what to do with all of it every day. Because trauma doesn't dissolve just with deep insights during videos or readings. It transforms when you consistently apply tools that create a new relationship with your pain. Carl Jung stated that there is no transformation of darkness into light without emotion. Transformation happens in practice, and emotional practice requires daily action, even if small. Here, you will learn tools that are not just symbolic or conceptual. They are tested techniques applied by psychotherapists based on deep psychology, working with the unconscious and the neurobiology of healing. The first tool is structured self-observation, almost like an emotional clinical diary. Every day, Note 3 moments when you felt an intense emotional reaction: anger, fear, sadness, or even deep apathy. For each one, answer, what happened externally? What did I feel exactly? Does this emotion remind me of something from my childhood or a significant moment? This exercise, done daily, builds a bridge between the past and the present. You start to identify which emotions are disproportionate and which are emotional echoes of old wounds. This mapping is essential to recognize unconscious patterns in real time. The second tool is the symbolic analysis of dreams. Dreams are productions of the unconscious that reveal what is trying to emerge within you. Use the Jungian method. Take a recurring or recent dream. Identify the main symbols, places, characters, emotions, and freely associate what each one represents for you. Ask, what does this image want to say? What part of me does it represent? What is it asking for attention? You don't need to get everything right. The simple act of interacting with the symbolic content already opens a channel of dialogue between the conscious and the unconscious, which Jung considered essential for any process of individuation and healing. The third tool is dialogue with pain, inspired by active imagination. In a quiet environment, with your eyes closed, visualize your pain as a figure. It could be a scared child, a monster, or an injured animal. Allow this image to speak to you. Ask it, what are you feeling? What do you need from me? What part of my life are you affecting today? Then, write down this conversation. Repeat this exercise once a week. You will notice that this pain has messages, needs, even memories you have forgotten. Jung believed that these images are not random. They are vivid representations of real psychic contents, trying to return to consciousness to be integrated. Another important practice is to establish symbolic closure rituals. For example, writing letters to people who hurt you, not to send, but to release what has been trapped. Or drawing the pain and then burning it as a symbol of transformation. These practices involve the body, emotion, and symbol, a fundamental triad for reprogramming the emotional circuits of trauma. And finally, contact with the body. Trauma also lives in muscle tensions, in truncated breathing, in insomnia, in compulsive habits. Practices like conscious breathing, somatic yoga, free dancing, and meditative walking help to teach the body that it is safe, even when the mind still doubts. The body needs to be reintegrated into the healing process. But remember, these tools only work when you commit to the process. It's no use using them once and expecting magical results. Transformation requires repetition, consistency, and courage. And even with all of this, there is still a final step, perhaps the most important of all, the decision to become whole again. Because everything you have learned so far prepares you for the deepest part of this journey, where trauma ceases to be the center of your identity and you finally return to being who you are in full. This is what we will talk about in the last part. The conclusion of the journey, the reconquest of self, the true integration. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to do with what happened. This phrase may seem simple, even cliched, but if you've made it this far, you already understand the weight it carries. Because you know now that trauma is not just a memory. It is a silent mold that, if not confronted, decides for you. It decides what you feel, who you love, what you tolerate, what you destroy. It seeps into your worldview and convinces you that you are small, broken, defective. But that is a lie. Trauma lies. Carl Jung said that most people live their lives as shadows of what they could be. And he was right. Because while pain drives your psyche, you are not living. You are just reacting. You are repeating. You are surviving. True healing is not about erasing the past. It is not about pretending it didn't hurt. It is about facing everything that broke you, and choosing to consciously rebuild yourself. It is about no longer being a victim of your story and becoming the author of the next chapter. And this doesn't happen all at once. It is a process, a continuous journey. And this journey requires a daily choice. The choice not to run away, the choice to feel, the choice to integrate. You don't need to become someone different. You just need to reclaim the parts of you that were abandoned. The ones that got stuck in that memory, that emotion, that silence. This is individuation, becoming whole. Not perfect, whole. And here's a brutal but necessary truth. No one is going to do this for you. The therapist can guide, the books can inspire, the videos can awaken. But in the end, it's you with yourself, you with your reflection, you with your shadow, and also you with your light. If today, in some way, this video touched something that was dormant inside you, I want to ask you one thing. Write in the comments the phrase, "My trauma does not define me." Write it as a commitment, as a beginning, because the first step to healing is breaking the silence. And maybe your courage will inspire someone else to start too. And more. Don't stop here. The journey doesn't end with this video. The next episode is just as important as this one, because each layer of the psyche needs a new perspective, a new understanding. So keep going, because you deserve to be free, holy, and that starts now.